Thanks, Heather. So again, I'm Hope Alwine, and I will be doing this webinar. We're covering marketing and accessible emojis, memes, and GIFs. Let's get started. We've all realized that the world is rapidly changing, and traditional forms of marketing like posters, newspaper ads, and flyers are becoming less reliable forms of advertising for events or products. Social media has become a prevalent source of information and marketing. I can tell you that as an academic librarian, social media is really one of the best tools to reach students and even faculty members these days. Now, a new challenge has risen from the ashes of print media. How do we utilize more visual components in our digital marketing and remain accessible? We're going to be looking at emojis, memes, and GIFs today. In each section, we will be defining them and then looking at ways to ensure everyone can enjoy the humor or emotion that comes with each one. Finally, we'll wrap up with some best practices for accessibility with digital marketing. Let's get started. I'm going to start with a short story from my academic library days. One day, my student assistants figured out that our internal chat had got a new batch of emojis, and they decided it was a good idea to send me an entire message in just emojis. While humorous, it was a good teaching moment for me, as many of my colleagues would probably not think it was very funny or professional. My look of displeasure made them laugh, but also my explanation of sending that to a faculty or staff member probably would not go over as well, and they should really consider that before hitting send. Emojis are great tools for expressing emotions and objects, but it does have some shortcomings, especially when it comes to accessibility. Emojis are created by the Unicode Consortium and do have some standardization, but the art changes from system to system. For example, the screenshot is one I grabbed from Emojipedia, but if I look at the same emojis on my iPad or my smartphone, they're going to look very different. New emojis come out regularly, such as the last batch being released in early September. That does translate into a compatibility issue, as it may take a little bit more time for other platforms to create their own versions of the same emojis. Each emoji has a common locale data report repository or CLDR name, and then additional keywords for searches. It was noted in a study, Emojis Accessibility for Visually Impaired People by Tigwell, Gorman, and Menzies, about the accessibility of emojis, that searching for emojis can be difficult for people with visual impairments. The problem is not only because of the keyword selection, but because some people who have never had sight cannot visualize the multitude of expressions that come up in a single search. For example, if a person searches happy, they could be overwhelmed with results, as well as not being able to tell the difference between a slightly smiling face and a smiling face without more context. Let's continue to the next slide and to look at some more issues and how to fix them. I was looking at the newest batch of emojis released in early September. The Unicode Consortium keeps records of each release and how emojis are classified. For example, see the screenshot with the new emoji of what I personally consider a Yeti or Bigfoot, but its official CLDR name is hairy creature. While I understand some of the other keywords, the librarian and digital accessibility specialist in me has some issues with the associated keywords like forest or giant. To combat the multitude of keywords associated with an emoji, it's recommended to test out the emojis with a screen reader prior to sending, as that can prepare you for any possible misunderstandings and maybe help you choose a better one to fit your circumstances. Also from the studies, some feedback from the participants with visual disabilities gives some good insights into how emojis can be used for digital marketing or communications. They tended to agree that sometimes emojis are a much easier way to express an emotion or an object, but be cautious in its use. One participant noted that a company was using a truck emoji in their shipping confirmation email subject line, and it confused the participant on why the word truck was at the start of the subject line. It is recommended that when using emojis within messages to try to use it at the end of sentences. Definitely don't use emojis as bullet points. It's the truck scenario all over again. And don't overly repeat emojis. when you're reading it with a screen reader, it's just repeating the same word over and over again. I've seen X posts where flower emojis are stacked on top of each other to form a bigger flower. And from an accessibility standpoint, the visual purpose does not translate well to people who are visually impaired. As mentioned in the previous slide, also remember that people with visual impairments since birth may not have the same frame of reference for some expressions, so keep that in mind. Even for people with sight, one emoji may appear different on a different device, so check compatibility of an emoji before using it. I was reading an article on the latest emojis that came out, and the content author was trying to have a list of the emojis, but none of them were loading on my browser. While I could continue on the thread with emojis, as it is a very rich topic, especially in terms of accessibility, let's continue to the other forms. Unlike emojis, which does have a modicum of standardization with Unicode, then there are memes. Memes are essentially an image with some text that goes viral due to its humorous content or the message. There's no standard for creating memes, and literally anyone can do it. One meme can be replicated with slight variations and spread through a myriad of accounts and platforms. One of my favorite uses of memes is utilized by the National Park Service within the US. I visited many national parks as a kid, and Yellowstone was one of my favorites and it really sticks out in my memory. When we arrived at the Welcome Center, there's several means of conveying the information that wildlife should not be approached. Yellowstone is home to bison, wolves, grizzly bear, elk, and other wildlife that, if bothered, it can really ruin a tourist vacation. The National Park Service does an excellent job of making sure that there's enough information on what could happen to a human if they interact with wildlife, such as videos, signs, pamphlets, and more. But still, people, for whatever their reasons are, decide to ignore those public safety announcements, and the results of their actions usually don't end well. The National Park Service decided to change tactics and start using social media to help spin the public service announcements into a context that people would actually read and hopefully comply with. The post on the slide is one of my favorites. It has wildlife safety as the heading text and ends with National Park Service at the bottom, and four comic book style rows with two panels. All are silhouette figures with captions above each panel. It starts with a person attempting to feed a squirrel, and the text reads, "Nope," above it. The next panel continues with a small sign that reads, "Do not feed," and the squirrel is further away, with the text reading, "Better." The next row has a person attempting to take a selfie with a bear, and it says, "Nope." The next panel has a person using a long distance camera lens with the bear further away, and it reads, "Good job," above it. The third row has a person standing up next to a moose and a "Nope" above. The next panel is a person standing quite some distance from the moose, and it reads, "Now you got it." The last row has a person attempting to pet a bison, and the caption says, "Why?" and follows the next panel of a herd of bison chasing the person with the caption of, "Good luck." Now, this isn't a very accessible meme as it took me a bit of time to describe it for people who are visually impaired, but it does signify a good way to market a public service announcement within the context of humor. Now, the National Park Service could break up the image into smaller images and the alt text could be utilized, but with all of it together, the alt text would be quite lengthy. So a caption or text description would need to accompany it for it to be accessible. Using the National Park Service X feed again, I found some more accessible memes. There's probably some questions on if this is truly a meme, as most memes have bold text on the image, but I wanted to show that memes don't necessarily have a standard equation for creation. Most of them have a text overlay on the image, but the same principle can be applied if the text is not on the image itself. If there is text on the image, make sure that it is included within the alt text and to give a basic description of the image to give context. A big component of memes is that the context and text make it more humorous, as it takes an outside concept or situation and it's applied to an image. The image can be anything from a still shot from a famous movie or TV show, or a regular person in a humorous pose. I've also seen memes with famous art or sculptures. The sky's the limit with memes. The example on this slide is an ex post from the National Park Service with text reading, "Woke up early, there was no worm." And the image description reads, "A young burrowing owl sporting an expression that's proving it's a real hoot at dawn." The two work together to create a humorous image that's accessible to all. I'm not a morning person, so this is one of my favorites. Memes don't have to be complicated as long as people understand the context and can connect the image with the underlying message. Most social media platforms now have the ability to add alt text and then make it easier for people using assistive technologies to access the alt text. Some key things to remember about writing alt text is to keep it simple, but also give the appropriate context. If you're referencing an image from a movie or a TV show, be sure to include the title of the movie or the character in the image to make sure people understand the context. Also, be sure that it is culturally appropriate for your audience. For example, I love Lord of the Rings and I scroll through many a meme relating to it, but the context may not be as funny in another part of the world where Lord of the Rings isn't as popular. People may not be as receptive to the underlying context, so be sure to know your audience before sending a meme out to the web. Let's continue with GIFs. So we've covered emojis and memes. Now let's move on to the next most popular, which is, next most popular element in social media today, the GIF. A GIF stands for graphic interchange format, which means it's more flexible than a standard still image as it can repeat a few frames in succession. It usually has no audio and contains short bursts of motion. A key thing to remember about GIFs is to make sure that you're not causing adverse physical reactions. So keep the motion and flashing content to a minimum. If it is possible to pause the animation, definitely include that. Unfortunately, we cannot do that in that presentation, so I'm going to click to view the GIF in just a second. So I did create my first GIF for this presentation. It's a short GIF of my lovable senior black lab mix and his signature small tail wag. His head is bobbing because he's begging for food. Even though it's minimal, it's seen that a GIF repeats the same motion. While GIFs at their core are not the best method for digital marketing, they can still be made accessible with alt text of the image description and highlighting the key motions with the animation. And for Pete's internet debut, his alt text would read, "Black lab mixed with gray face, head bobbing, and tail wagging." All right, let's wrap it up with everything that we've learned. I could have peppered this presentation with many examples of emojis, memes, and GIFs that are popular on social media. But the point of the presentation was to learn about the basics of each one and then build general rules of accessibility when creating content with these components. First things first, when it comes to accessibility in digital marketing, know your audience and try to reach as many users with the same content. Cultural references for popular culture may work in one market and not in another. But don't exclude people who use assistive technologies. There are more assistive technologies out there than you think, and even people without disabilities use them. Another thing to keep in mind is to maintain professionalism and evaluate if emojis are appropriate to use with work communications or presentations. Keep your communications as clear as possible, using plain language to ensure your meaning is being understood, and try to keep the components out that may be misinterpreted. Another good practice is to give enough context so the true meaning of the component is portrayed. Use alt text and text to make sure everyone can get the message, or a laugh, of a meme or a GIF. Emojis are great for expressing emotions in various objects, but don't use them in the middle of sentences or repeat several in a row. Use them at the end of sentences and check their descriptions with a screen reader. And also check your compatibility to ensure your meaning is being translated correctly. Memes and GIFs require alt text to describe the image and provide context for the image, whether it's the image itself or in the post. GIFs can be a great way to display small bursts of motion, but use sparingly as they can be distracting. And if possible, give controls to be able to stop the motion. All in all, the landscape of digital marketing is changing, and these components can be used as tools to aid in the communicating a message that's beneficial to your audience. They can be used to better portray a message, attach specific emotions, or give varying add levity to a situation, and hopefully better instill the message to individuals, like wildlife safety in U.S. national parks. No matter how you use emojis, memes, or GIFs, make sure everyone can get a laugh or a smile from the content you create by making it accessible. And our traditional kind of sales point of how can accessible web help? Well, we have Ramp is one of our web accessibility softwares. We also offer manual auditing, consulting, as well as educational resources like this webinar, as well as our academy courses. We also can help you write a VPAT if you need one, and I will let Gianna take it from here.
Yeah, yeah. So if you guys join us regularly, you probably know that the typical end slide here with how we can help, but we offer a comprehensive range of accessibility services as well as Ramp, which is the tool I dropped a registration link for in chat there. So if you haven't checked it out, we offer free trials, and we offer an extension on the free trials for people who are in this webinar and grab that coupon code. So if you have any questions or a specific accessibility project you want to chat about, whether that be kind of websites and VPATs or software and tooling, please reach out. We're readily available. So we have lots of contact forms on the website. So just let us know, and we're here to help. We can meet you where you're at. Awesome. Thank you very much, Hope.